we've got Josh Mason, the Director of Cyber Training at Arbiter, who brings a unique blend of military experience and extensive experience in building cyber programs and developing training. As a former combat pilot and cyber warfare officer in the United States Air Force, he shaped cybersecurity education and built training programs. He taught at renowned institutions like the U.S. Air Force Special Operations School and the DoD Cyber Crime Center's Cyber Training Academy. Josh is also co-author for the Penetration Testing Student Program and the eLearn Security Junior Penetration Tester exam. So next up, the business value of cybersecurity and how pilots get from place to place.
Thanks, Nicole. Welcome, everyone. So today we're going to talk about two things that are near and dear to my heart: the business value of cybersecurity, and then how pilots get from place to place. Too often, we have a disconnect between the business side of the company and the IT and cybersecurity side of the company. And I myself have had to learn how to deal and talk to people. One of my favorite books is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. The book is now nearly 100 years old, or the stories in it, and the principles still stand. If you read modern books like Radical Candor, they cover 90% of the same information, just updated to companies and examples from now. We can take some of the key points from those and utilize them while we're trying to internally sell cybersecurity. One of the key points that Dale Carnegie has in trying to win people over to your way of thinking or to impress people is arousing the other person an eager want. Too often, we are trying to sell cybersecurity as an additional thing, as something. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Then I will make sure that I put the mic right in front of me. Is that better? Hopefully. Okay. Thank you so much. So often we have this clash between business and cybersecurity. If we want to really sell cybersecurity, what we need to do is sell business in a cybersecurity flavor. There's another example: bait the hook for the fish that you want. I like Reuben sandwiches, but fish may or may not be interested in that. They want worms. So if you want to catch a fish, then you should put worms on the end of your hook. Send it out. In the same way, if we want to reach business people, we need to speak business to them. There are a few things that we do with risk management. Mitigation implementation has costs, and those costs are going to be competition in budget. There are other things that the company can do with the money that they might put towards MFA or a pen test or a full-fledged risk management assessment or upgrading their MDR provider. If we want to be able to compete with marketing and sales and product development for budget, we need to speak to what the business needs. A little aside here, there's an idea of cost centers. So in any company, you've got revenue, which is incoming money, costs, which is outgoing money. This should be fairly straightforward, but I do want to make sure we're all on the same page. And then your profit is the financial benefit. It's everything that's left when you have the revenue minus the costs. Too often, there are parts of the company that are seen as cost centers. So those are parts of the organization that are not accountable for profit. So traditionally, cybersecurity IT are not held accountable for profit. If there's a loss, if there's gains, there's usually not a bonus coming back to IT or cyber. Instead, sales might see a bonus if they increase revenues. The dev team might see bonuses if they increase revenues. However, if those things happen, rarely are IT and cybersecurity going to see a piece because they're not seen as contributing to those profits. So if we want to increase profits, you either increase revenue or decrease costs. Company is often going to turn to us as a cost center, and if they need to increase profits, they'll want to decrease costs. And if all that we are costs, we're not providing revenue, then you're going to be fighting for the budget that you already need just to get your work done. However, the idea of value is more important than profit and cost. It's different than revenue. It's different than cost or profit. Value is what the company actually does. There's in the business value, there's the benefit to the customer, the benefit to the business, and then resource utilization. And each of those has tangibles and intangibles. And overall, if you want to increase business value, there's things that can be done overall. So you could increase profits, you could increase enterprise valuation if it's a startup or a company going to be bought or trying to raise funding. Higher valuation might be more important than revenue. It might be more important than lowering costs. Sales price kind of ties into that. Is there a goal? Is there an exit strategy for the company that a sales price for the organization matters? What about competitor risk? Who are we up against? And how does what we have going on make us competitive in the market? What about our vendor or supplier relationship? How are we seen as a vendor? Do we have downstream customers that might value us more regardless of cost based off of cybersecurity? There is a lot there in the mergers and acquisitions, as well as the third party risk that is coming back towards us in cybersecurity. Companies don't want to as much anymore. They don't want to bring on smaller companies that have risk associated with them. They would rather get those things cleaned up as soon as they can. Sorry, it does seem like my double check my gain. Hopefully that sounds better. I think it was auto gaining on me. Excellent. Thank you. So what we can do is a business value analysis. There are 4 dimensions to a business value analysis. There's the financial returns. There's the technical risk mitigation, the legal risk mitigation, and then increased reliability of operations. The purpose of doing a business value analysis is to take what could otherwise be an obscure set of decisions related to cybersecurity and allow you to communicate the benefits of those actions to key decision makers and later to everyone else in business friendly terms. Again, giving worms to fish. Instead of speaking cyber at them, we speak business to them. The business value model contains trust at its center and divides value into 4 quadrants. Financial returns quadrant focuses on cost savings, competitive differentiation, increased productivity, decision enhancement, and brand enhancement. Technical risk mitigation is focused on data confidentiality, trustworthiness, authorization, and business continuity. And then the legal risk mitigation is focused on due diligence, increased accountability, external and internal compliance, and improved awareness. And then the increased reliability of operations is focused on increased availability, preservation of data integrity, disaster recovery, and preservation of current capabilities. All of these we know are in our realm in cybersecurity, but often we don't sell to the company what it is that we are actually providing, what that actual value is. We just say we need to increase security. No, we don't need to increase security. We need to increase business value. They are the same thing, but how we speak them, how we share them is going to be more effective in the long run. So here's an example. Password managers. Uh, Consider a password manager being recommended for implementation across the customer service team. So the customer service director doesn't know much about technology, cyber risks, or password protection. They just know tickets come in, we have to answer so many calls, we need to get things out. That's their job is not to think about technology or cyber risk. Their job is to serve customers. So if you go to the director and say, we're rolling out new cybersecurity process for your department that will require a new piece of software be installed on all your customer service agents' workstations, they're likely going to say, like, no, or we can't do this, or you might get pushback. Often people have heard things like, why are you making my people do this? Or they're already busy enough. How is this plan of yours going to help us serve our customers better? Or even, I don't see the value in that. They are already thinking about value. They're already thinking about what they're giving to the customer. We need to be thinking about what we're giving to the customer and then sell, not we need to increase cybersecurity. We need to sell the concerns that that director already has that we want to increase. So to be persuasive in the situation, use language that makes sense to them. Explain the business value of your proposed changes. Make them understand how the entire department is going to be better and hopefully more productive. If you can't explain the purpose behind your cybersecurity changes in a way that gets buy-in from the business side, your organization, you won't be able to make changes at all. So soft skills are extremely important in risk assessments, in our risk management role in cybersecurity. Double checking my gain. I think my system is auto gaining down. I'll have to check that. So another way the business value model can be used is justifying spending on cybersecurity measures. So again, password managers, but this time we are fighting for budget. Perhaps the password managers for the entire customer service department is $25,000 annual expense. The money has to come from somewhere. And if it's not already in the budget to allocate a certain amount every year on top of things for cybersecurity, then you're going to be fighting for budget that, new allocation each year. So in that competition, perhaps someone in marketing might propose to use the $25,000 to run a marketing campaign that would increase your top line revenue by 2%. Depending on how much money the company's making, 2% could be a lot of money. We could be talking millions, if not tens of millions of dollars. If the company can make tens of millions of dollars more by spending that 25 grand versus what are you going to be providing? So it's one of those, if someone from sales might say that they could hire 3 interns for the summer for that money and increase their number of outbound calls by 5%. And if they have a correlation of calls to sales to revenue, then you're going to be competing on budget that marketing and sales can tie directly to what they suggest will be increased revenue. What can we do in cybersecurity to battle that, to fight that? There's a few things that you could do. You do need to figure out what it is that we do in cybersecurity and tie those together. What value do you bring to the organization that will be representative in revenue? Depending on your organization, it can be many different things. Again, Valuation overall, third-party risk is a big one with the new SEC rules. Perhaps there's more concern about risk going the risk of the organization uh, vice just making profits. So you have tools there. Let's look at one more example of this business value of implementing the crisis communication plan. And the crisis communication plan has major benefits in the technical risk mitigation quadrant. So we can identify several applicable value factors for this proposal, including data confidentiality, trustworthiness, and business continuity. All of those are things that the company will likely value. Thus, if we pitch that time, effort, and money needs to go into this because it fits with what the company cares about, we're going to more likely get buy-in. Crisis communication plan also increase trustworthiness in the organization by enhancing confidence in the overall security of systems and processes. A lot of this is why people in healthcare and banks are able to get buy-in when they pitch cybersecurity. Unfortunately, they don't get enough buy-in because, well, data breaches happen and uh, ransomware is still a thing. There are at least rules and there is at least value there to bolster us when we start speaking in value terms. With these factors and the additional ones we might want to add, we build support for implementing the crisis communication plan to minimize the gap between our um, target outcomes and where the organization currently sits. So let's put it all together. You want to use worms with fish. If you're fighting with a CFO, valuation, um, profit margins, possible mergers, all of those things will matter to them. So, how can what we're implementing in cybersecurity apply to those things? You want to speak in the language that business speaks in. Too often, when we get into cybersecurity, we think about different types of ransomware, or different types of malware. We think about ports and IP addressing and all the hardware and software that goes on in the IT realm. Unfortunately, we don't speak enough about business until you get into the higher realms where you're already present there. If you want to get in that playground and be speaking with people about business, then start on that early in your career. Start learning what it is that your company is about. If it's a bank, and maintaining value, maintaining confidentiality of what your clients and customers put into the organization, then every time that you want to pitch something about cybersecurity, tie it back to that. If you're a healthcare organization, our customers find the values of the organization. If they say our customers are our number one priority, then everything that you want to bring up in cybersecurity isn't about you. It isn't about the program. It's about the customers and what the organization says it cares about customers. If we want to really take care of our customers, then we need to protect the information that they give to us. One of the hardest things in life is looking at things from someone else's point of view. The golden rule, it's thousands of years old. Really, it ties back to some of the earliest philosophers in the earliest writings that we've got. Um, take things from the other person's point of view and try to match that. So if the organization's worried about costs, why? Why are they worried about costs? What is it that in the end they're truly worried about? Will they not be able to make payroll? If they're not able to make payroll, what are the triggers for the overall business goals that need to be taken into account? And then how can we aid with that? Maybe it's we don't have the money, we won't have the money now, but we might have the money later. If that's the case, then get in their minds about how you're going to help overall, so that then when money is available, they go, oh, we're going to implement that thing that you mentioned because it will help us with our overall goals. Because that's what everyone else is doing in the company. They're already speaking about how they're going to make more money for the company, how they're going to aid customers, how they're going to help clients or um, patients, all of these things. So if you're not speaking in that language, you need to be. Deliver what they want. If you know the language they're speaking, the values that the company has, what the organization is delivering, your cybersecurity and information security should be part of that. It should go hand in hand. I have said some of the same things over and over again, and hopefully they've landed because I do believe that this is one of the most impactful ways to influence your organization in cybersecurity. Now I'm going to completely switch over and talk about one of my near and dear to my heart topics is flying. I was a C-130 pilot in the Air Force. Thank you, Leslie, and all you great folks who kept our planes in working order. Often people, you need to fly someplace, you're going to show up at the airport at a certain time, you've gotten, bought tickets online, and they're going to take you to your final destination. What actually goes on for the pilot when they have to set up that flight? Well, I set up a scenario where we're going from Newport Pier in Newport Beach, California to the Washington Monument. And ironically, we've got airports within like 20, 30 minutes of each of those locations. Also, you can hop on I-40 and drive for a couple days and make that exact same trip. Well, what does that look like when you're a pilot? Well, first, we pull up some charts. We have to go over mountains. We're crossing the continent. And there's a lot of considerations in there. Let's look at our starting point. I picked us John Wayne Airport in Santa Ana, Orange County, California. It is in a busy location. There's a lot going on in that chart. Um, Pilots call maps charts. I don't know why, we just do. And but this is a VFR chart, a visual flight rules chart. It shows landmarks. The yellow on there shows what lights would look like from the air at night to kind of help pilots who are flying VFR by visual flight rules. It's you have to keep clearances away from other planes. You have to fly at certain altitudes. Planes fly at either 1,000-foot intervals, so 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, or if they're flying VFR, then they'll fly on the 500. So 2,500 feet, 3,500 feet. And ironically, internationally, we fly it at feet. So feet is the international measure in aviation. So are knots, which are neither metric nor standard, or nautical miles. But you've got a couple different ways that you can fly. You can either fly VFR or IFR. In instrument flight rules, there's an old joke. IFR stands for I follow roads. Often, when you're flying VFR, you're going to fly off of big landmarks. And if you're flying long distances, some of the best landmarks are highways. But with instrument flight rules, you have air traffic controllers controlling you, and they keep you from crashing into other planes. And they also allow you or keep you from crashing into obstacles. They will put you at altitudes and on headings and on routes that will keep you safe from obstacles on the ground or in the air. It's kind of great. Let's learn a little bit about John Wayne Airport. So the FAA identifier is SNA. In the United States, we've got Kilo as the identifier. All airports internationally have 4 letters. So Kilo Sierra Nevada Alpha, KSNA. We've got the elevation. It's right about sea level at 55 feet. There's magnetic variation and UTC -8. Everything in flying is based off of Zulu time or universal time code, which is Geneva median. Geneva time. We've got some information about the airport operations. It's open to the public. There's some codes in there that matter. We know what we're looking for with NOTAMs. NOTAMs are notices to airmen. I'll get to that in a little bit. The Air Traffic Control Center is Los Angeles Center, and we've got certain types of lights and beacons on the airfield. There's no landing fee if we've got overnight. We're flying out of here, so that doesn't matter too much to us. So what does the airport actually look like? Pilots used to fly, and you still can, with these books that are about this big, and they would fit on your knee, and they flip up. They have information about the airport. They're going to have the terminal or standard terminal air arrival information. They're going to have instrument approaches. They're going to have the departure information, and I'll go through a lot of that. But if you see these black and white diagrams like I've got on the left, those come out of those charts. Now a lot of them are digital. You can get them all as PDFs. And a lot of the information that I've got here, I pulled off of AirNav, which gets updated regularly and is a great resource. I've been using it the whole time I've been a pilot. We've got frequencies. We've got a diagram showing what the airport looks like. The terminal is in the northeast side. We've got 2 runways, a longer runway, 20 right and 2 left. Runways are numbered based off of their magnetic heading. And we see what our magnetic deviation or variance is there at the top left. But we do that based off of usually what the controlling winds are in the area. And that's what we've got over here on the right. The METAR is Meteorological Aerodrome Report, METAR. Weird acronyms. The TAF is the Terminal Air Forecast, or Terminal Aerodrome Forecast, TAF. And those are going to be forecasted weather. They're based off of time codes in UTC, in Zulu. So on the 20th at 1753 Zulu, took these a few days ago, the weather was 230 at 06 knots. So out of the heading of 230, there were 10 statute miles of visibility with few clouds at 1,600 feet. You might have heard few clouds, scattered clouds, broken clouds, and overcast. These are different terms that we use based off of how much of the sky is taken up by clouds. If you have a ceiling, it's described as broken or overcast. On the far right, you can see broken BKN 017 and OVC 028. Those are ceilings of different layers of clouds. There's also scattered at 1,000. They do these multiplied by 10, trying to make it the most information in a small amount that's easily readable to those of us who have learned how to read it. The one on the right, also, I took that yesterday. It was raining. It was lightly raining. That's what the minus RA means, lightly raining. And then BR is mist or baby rain, the fun one. There's altimeter settings 2991. 2992 is the standard sea level altimeter setting. It's also what we'll set in Class A airspace, which I'll get to in a minute. Your altimeter setting will set the your altimeter is going to be based off the pressure uh, altitude at your location. So the altimeter is going to change based off of making sure that you have the most accurate information for where you are. We know based off of what was covered before, this is at sea level at 55 feet. So if you're sitting on the ground at John Wayne Airport and you put in the altimeter setting, the in the case on the right, 2991, and it says you're at 1500 feet, you have a bad altimeter setting. You should be at 55 feet. And you can even see on the airport diagram elevation of 52 right in the middle, and elevation of 40 at the approach end of 20 left. The runways show how long they are, how wide they are, what kind of lighting to expect. A lot of fun stuff there. Then we've got NOTAMs. The NOTAMs are going to tell us all of the notices to airmen, and they can be traffic or planned traffic, maybe construction on the runway, lights that are out, the lights on towers nearby that might be out. That's usually what a lot of them say. We've got information about all of the frequencies that we might need to talk to people and some of the navigational aids that are nearby. I'll get into those in a bit. We've got some more information on the runways. Again, what sorts of lights to expect there. Lights matter a lot, especially to make sure that you land at the right airport. I flew C-130s. We land usually on the right airport. If you're in C-17s, apparently it's matters less. And we're flying out of here. So there's some information that we want to know about flying out. There are takeoff minimums and some takeoff procedures. So our weather was showing in both these cases 230 at 6 knots or 170 at 8 knots. Those are both 30 degrees off of runway 20. So we've got either winds from the left or winds from the right, but we would expect to take off on runway 20 right. Okay, so taking off on 20 right, we would have a climbing right turn direct to the SLI of VORTAC. And SLI of VORTAC might not make any sense to you. Hopefully I get there in a sec. There's also some instrument procedures that we could expect. There's a couple different types of departures. There's a Muscle 8 departure and the Irvine 5 departure. You're going to file a flight plan of where you're flying to, where you're flying from, information about you, the plane, the altitudes, the times. And air traffic control will pull this up and you'll activate your flight plan and ask for a departure clearance. The clearance will tell you exactly what to fly, what they expect you to do, but they might have us fly one of these departures, in which case we'll need to be planning, have it in our mind what we'll do once we get off the ground, pull up the wheels and flaps, and where are we going to fly so we don't crash into other planes. There's a couple options for us. Now, I want to cover airspace real fast. There's a couple different types of airspace. Class E airspace is for everyone. Class G airspace is close to the ground. Class G airspace has very few rules, but it's also, again, very close to the ground. Class E airspace goes all the way up to 18,000 feet, at which point they become flight levels and you enter Class A airspace. Class A airspace is only for IFR, for instrument flight rules, where you are controlled by air traffic control. You set your altimeter to 2992. Everyone does above 18,000 feet. And it ensures that jets don't crash into one another. Air traffic control will see us all on radar. You have to have certain radio equipment. You have to have certain equipment that shows who you are and broadcast that to all the other planes and to air traffic control. And you have to be certified and licensed to fly in Class A airspace. So there's a lot that happens in there. But that's usually where you've flown, in case you're curious. Then around airports, we've got different types of airspace. We have Class D airspace, which is for any towered field that has controlled runway and instrument approaches. There are some airfields that don't have a tower. They don't have any sort of air traffic control. They've got wholly different rules. But in Class D, you've got a minimum requirement to fly there. Class C airspace, C, I always think of cities. Small cities or a city airport is going to have certain rules. And then Class B is, I think, of big cities. LAX, DC, St. Louis, Houston, Dallas. These all have Class B airspace, and they have very strict rules because often they have a lot of traffic, all funneling in at certain places. And they've got altitudes and distances that are tied in there. We're not going to get into that. But these are all considerations of how you're going to fly and what you need to be thinking about and looking for when you're a pilot. I mentioned Vortex. We have VOR, which is VHF. Oh man, weird acronyms. Basically, these are big radio antennas that tell you your distance and radial from the antenna. And you have to have an HSI, a horizontal situation indicator, with a CDI, a course deviation indicator, in your aircraft that you can tune to one of these stations. And they're all over the planet, really. And some of them can be mobile. TACANs were actually developed so that they could be on ships, both for ship-to-ship navigation as well as for aircraft and ship navigation. They're gimbaled in such a way that if they sway in the ocean, you still get accurate reading, whereas VORs don't. But VORs also don't move, so it's usually not a problem. And there's DME, which is distance measuring equipment. See, that one's easy. Why can't all acronyms be that way? And so we're going to fly from each of these radio antennas one to the other. We also need to pick an altitude. So the winds at altitude can be quite severe. There's a legend down here about the different wind barbs. A big barb is 50 knots, and a small barb is 10 knots, and the half barbs are 5s. So some of these winds are going from about 45 knots all the way up to 70 knots. And you can see it gets really intense up to 120, 160 knots because it's also color coded. There's a thing called the jet stream, and it moves seasonally and to different altitudes. You want to fly with the jet stream when it helps you. You want to avoid the jet stream when it's in your way. Your speed is going to be based off of your overall ground speed. Planes fly at an indicated airspeed. It's what the engines and the wings can do. Based off of altitude, you're going to get some bonus because you get about 20% more efficiency at every 1,000 feet higher you go, just because the air gets thinner, which creates less drag, makes you essentially go faster. But depending on your headwind or your tailwind, you might not want to go higher or lower. So at 27 or flight level 270, which is 27,000 feet, you've got those winds. They get a little different the higher up we go. This is 360. The winds are more intense. Going up to 4.2, even more intense. But up at 4.8, it gets less intense. There's some cool calculators where you can put in the winds aloft across your flight and the altitudes, and it's going to tell you what altitude would get you your best airspeed. We can pick those for our flight plan and ask for those in flight. We can also get updates along the way. It's why you can have planes that might be flying at the same indicated airspeed but are passing each other because of their altitude offset. You fly NEOD, so odd numbers going north and east, and Sweven. So even numbers going east and west. So 480 would actually be a westerly altitude. And just showing how your indicated airspeed changes with true airspeed at different altitudes because the air gets thinner. We take indicated airspeed and calibrated airspeed because each plane has different equipment, change with your true airspeed, and then based off of what your wind is, then you end up with your ground speed. And that's why you can have so many different speeds when you're flying. It's kind of what it looks like. See how our indicated and our true airspeed and our ground speed be so very different. Talk about charts. There's low charts and high charts. Low charts are below 18,000 feet, but you're still flying IFR. And then there's high charts, and those are above 18,000 feet. And in here, we've actually got routes, same as highways, but in the air. So there are jet routes above 18,000 feet, and I've plotted this out to take a few jet routes across the country. These help air traffic control to know exactly where people are going, to make travel a little easier, make planning a little easier. But it goes from each of these little dots is another one of those radio towers that we can get a bearing off of and fly to. So we'll take off out of Anaheim, head north or northeast, and then hit one of these vortex, and then take J110 across the country. And you can see that this is the 065 radial off of the BVU vortex. So we can dial all those things in and fly that. Kind of fun. Then we're going to fly into Reagan. So Reagan is very busy right here in the DC area. We'll get more information about the runway, about the airfield, about the weather. We can expect to land on runway 1 probably tonight, or 15 when there's 050. 050, I would probably land on 01. See what the NOTAMs look like, and then how do we actually get there? There's some information about what's on the runway. The Reagan has some great arresting stuff because they're short runways and they don't want people to go off into the Potomac. There's arrivals. These will drive us in a route that makes the most sense to air traffic control. And we can ask for these, but they'll really tell us where they want us to go. And then there's something called an ILS and a localizer that will really, it's an instrument that will dial us directly to the runway. Then you can land, jump in an Uber, take it to the Washington Monument. Sorry. I had a lot of fun there talking about airplane stuff. I know we don't really have time for questions. I'll take any that I can get.
I think you'll have to pop into chat, but mostly people are now not going to be able to believe Top Gun after that presentation.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing with us. And it was lovely to find out all about piloting as well as how to talk to business people.
Thanks for having me.